to this episode of the Event Manager Podcast, the podcast for curious event professionals who want to stay ahead of the game. My name is Miguel Neves, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Event MB. In this episode titled From Events to Communities, I have the pleasure of speaking with Mathijs Vleeming, online community evangelist and strategy consultant at Open Social. We cover a lot of topics around community building, in particular for associations, and these include how the biggest value of associations is the ability to connect people, how organizations benefit from being community-focused, why communities must always focus first on the needs of its members, why bottom-up communities succeed and how this requires organizations to let go of control, and how creating a culture of dialogue requires a big shift in mindset. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and I invite you to check out the other episodes of the Event Manager Podcast on our website, or you can subscribe through your favorite podcast service. Welcome to another episode of the Event Manager Podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Mathijs Vleeming. Hopefully I said that correct. Mathijs, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Miguel. Thanks for having me.
So we've known each other for, 10, 12 years, something like that, a long time. We've been together at many in-person events and also some online events in the last couple of years. But for people that don't know who you are, could you give us a little short introduction and then kind of tell us how you got to be you?
Okay, cool. So indeed, my name is Mathijs Vleeming. I have a long history within the association meetings industry. I've been with ICA for 19 years, International Congress and Convention Association, for those listeners who don't know ICA. But I guess we're talking to the events industry here, so you know. Last 5 years I was director of marketing, then COVID happened. And I actually had on my roadmap as director of marketing for ICA already the idea to implement an online community platform for ICA. I always believed in the power of online community. We both have a history in social media and trying to make that relevant and add value for online events or for events. So I decided to join Open Social, and Open Social is an online community platform. We are open SaaS, so we are software as a service, and specialized in mission-driven communities. So Open Social has clients like Greenpeace, the United Nations, European Commission, but also associations like the World Seed Federation. And we're offering or we're selling a product that is an online community platform or a member engagement platform that they use to connect their members year round. And before I go further, that's my background. Yeah, and at Open Social, I have a double title. I'm an online community evangelist, so I spread the gospel about the value of online community for associations and other organizations. But I'm also a strategy consultant, so I help all types of Open Social clients to build their community strategy.
And what does that mean? I mean, so you're working with Open Social, which is one of the providers of this kind of like community platform, but you also help people to kind of onboard it, get it into their association. Is that kind of your work as well?
So what we're working on is create the community strategy. So what are your organization's goals of deciding to build an online community, and what are your members' needs, and how do we build an engagement strategy around this that actually is targeted towards a joint purpose or joint goals of your community members and of your organization, and how do we build content and activation around that?
Okay.
Yeah, and that's not just for associations, it's also for other types of organizations that use our platform.
So if we were talking to somebody that doesn't understand the event industry or the association industry, if you will, how would you describe kind of what you do?
The community platform, you mean? To describe
just
that?
Your role. I'm always interested in kind of how do you explain to people who don't necessarily understand the event industry what it is that you do?
Yeah. So in the evangelist role, we talk about, especially association meetings. I think an association meeting has looked like in 2019, it didn't look that much different than it looked maybe in the 80s or 90s even. I think that the digital transformation has sort of been like a parallel universe to association meetings. It's not been really happening there. As we both know, he's also influencer of social media, but yeah, it's not really been a priority because, of course, associations are focusing, are used to building and engaging with their community through events. That's how they have traditionally done it, and what their business model is, an engagement model is focused on. However, of course, COVID happened. Associations went to virtual events, which is basically, in a way, a bit of old school thinking still, right? It's doing what you were used to do in person and doing that online. Of course, that's changing a bit. I believe an association is not in the events industry or the events organizing industry, but in the community building industry. And that makes a huge difference because the way in which we organize communities nowadays is very different than it has been since a couple of years ago. And we see very good examples of that from purpose-driven organizations at Open Social, where they very actively, for instance, Greenpeace or the United Nations, are combining, are connecting members to create added value. So Greenpeace is very well at activating volunteers, bottom-up, grassroots campaigns. To join the campaign and take action and organize events towards their purpose and contribute towards that purpose together. And the UN is, including internal and external stakeholders to discuss sustainable development goals, for example. And that's a mix of online community and year-round discussion and in-person events.
I mean, these are both organizations that are depend on a lot of volunteers, a lot of committees, a lot of bodies, a lot of different levels of engagement, right? So pretty impressive stuff. But let's backtrack a little bit. I want to kind of like frame community building and the work in the. You mentioned, I think, the community industry. I have to be honest. I wasn't aware that there was a community industry in as such, right? But I think it's the same thing as the event industry. I think a lot of people in business don't necessarily think of an event industry. They think of events as sort of a function of other things. So could you frame for me a little bit of, what you see as the community industry and maybe a little kind of quick history of kind of, who the leading people are and what is it all about?
Yeah, no, definitely. To be honest, it was quite new for me as well until like 1.5, 2 years ago when I left ICA. Because I deep dived into this belief that online community is the way forward for associations, having the background in an association myself and in the association meetings industry. And of course, I know a lot about associations and I know a lot about the events industry, but I didn't know a lot yet about the community building industry and the community industry. So I started taking courses, reading up on it, really, psychology of community building, things like that. By thought leaders in the community building industry, like Richard Millington and David Spinks, and Margie Anderson is someone who really has great ideas about community building for associations. I basically, studied it, to be honest. And I saw that actually the events industry can learn a lot from the community building industry and vice versa. As we both know, the lines between events and communities are fading a bit. However, I also see the community industry as being quite separate from the events industry, while often, like community managers, also organize events and in-person events, because in-person events remain still the primary driver of community building. But they have a lot of frameworks, models. What is the business value of a community and how to define that? And they have great models and great best practices for that are very useful for anyone moving from an events-led engagement model to a community-led engagement model that we can use and that I am using in my consultancy services, actually also with associations, because it helps them to have the funding, to create the internal goodwill, to get the stakeholders on board, to invest in online community.
Can you break that down for us? You mentioned these two models right there, the community model and the events model. Can you give us a kind of verbal breakdown of how those two are different, really, in essence?
We talked about this already, and I'm now going back a bit to my ICA years, right, where we see engagement with members year-round is quite low, right?
Traditionally for an association, you have a certain number of events. So maybe you have a big annual event. You might have some regional events or some smaller events.
Yeah.
But you see that as being kind of the peak of the interaction with members is around events and around sort of, whether they're kind of in-person gatherings or just people get excited about it or whatever, there's a sort of peak at certain points of the year, right? That's what you mean by the event model?
Yeah, indeed. So traditionally, the event-led model, people gather maybe a couple of times a year, maybe once a year at the annual conference. There's a lot of connection and interaction there and knowledge shared. And the rest of the year, engagement is very low. So that's a peak in engagement. And after the peak, after the in-person event, engagement is flat. Often, right? And all the knowledge and connections shared at that in-person event is only shared with those members of your community that are attending that in-person event. But it's not available to the rest of your member community who are not attending that in-person event. So that's your traditional model. It's all built around that. And that's why I think if you organize online events in a world where everyone is always connected, it doesn't really make sense to close an event after it has taken place, right? Because why would you do that? If you're in the community building industry and not in the events industry, as we say associations are, then you want to continue those conversations, right? You want to continue sharing that knowledge, and you don't want to just that to be event-led only.
Now, you make a really interesting point. I think when it comes to online virtual events, you can continue indefinitely, right? There doesn't have to be a start and an end. But I always have this challenge when we talk about this topic, which is when there's a date, when there's a focus, you kind of gather people around a specific topic, and you know that they're going to be focused on this for a couple of days or whatever it is that the event happens. If it's all year round, then that's not so easy. And for me, like, I feel like there's a missing piece, which is sort of this milestone. Like, this was the annual conference 2018,
yeah.
and this was the topic or whatever. And those things are memorable, right? And they might be memorable for the right or wrong reasons. It might be more memorable because the dinner was great or whatever, but they're memorable. They kind of like helped you to structure your memories. If you're always on, isn't that a challenge? And how do you kind of mitigate that challenge to actually, turn it on its head and kind of make that into an advantage?
Yeah, no, I think even if you're always on as well, and you are, right, you're always connected to your members. But of course, events, like I said, remain the main engagement driver, but they are, instead of the only engagement driver, they become a peak or a top of a wave in your annual community experiences that you are offering to your members. Because if you think in terms of community instead of events, you're also talking about different types of community experiences that you can offer. And of course, the events industry and associations are very used to synchronous community experiences. This is a difficult word for just saying events, right? And those can be in person or online. But the community industry and community platforms also provide a lot of asynchronous tools for that you can offer throughout the year that drive engagement. And before I go into some of those examples, I think the biggest, also something to realize here, I think the biggest value as an association that you can offer to your members is your ability to connect your members. Right, and by just doing that only at events, which often are top down, right, because it's listening to education that's organized top down, and which is not about connecting your members, then you're not using the power of connecting your members, and with an online community, and especially with an owned one, you can immediately, once a new member joins, you can immediately connect them with other members they should meet based on the topics of interest or topics of expertise that they want to profile themselves in. You can immediately connect them with other members with relevant content, with relevant events, with relevant papers or resources in the resource library. You can immediately provide value to that member. So that's a big difference. So you don't only have to wait until in-person events to do that, but some of these asynchronous tools. So a really interesting one we use at Open Social is ideation or challenges tool, which is a community is all bottom up, right? And connecting members around this and getting them to collaborate. So if you are posting like a joint challenge for an industry or a decision that the association needs to make, members can actually collaborate ideas and collaborate potential solutions to this challenge. And they can work on each other's ideas, and they can vote on each other's ideas, and they can actually take some ownership of those ideas and drive those new initiatives forward within their association. Which is, of course, all what you want to do as an association. You want to mobilize your members to contribute to your mission together. And these type of tools, they help to do that not only at events, but year round.
So it sounds to me that you're saying it can be a good idea. There are tools to make this easy or to make this work. But it also sounds to me like it takes a bit more than a mindset shift. It's not just thinking about it differently, but there's a lot of other activities, right? Because just making things available to people doesn't mean that they get excited about it or they kind of, really thrive in this new environment. So what in your mind are kind of the core things to really make communities thrive? And I know you're working on a community compendium. It should be released very shortly, so we'll make sure to add that in the show notes in the podcast notes, because I believe it's open source, right? You're sharing that with the world, so I think that'll be a good guide. But just off the top of your head, can you share kind of some high level advice to people that are kind of trying to make this shift into more of a community led approach?
But it takes a couple of things. The first thing is start small. That really is, and build it with them, right? So listen to your members. What are their needs? And often for an association, which is often built around knowledge sharing and learning together, it's very good to start with a certain need that is within a certain part of your membership. For instance, there could be a working group, or there could be a chapter working on a project together. It makes very good sense to start with a collaboration project, or to start with a working group and actually facilitate in a central location, which is that online community platform, facilitate the interaction between those members and empower them to collaborate together with central place for documents, with a central group to meet, for them to organize their own meetings within that group and collaborate on that. Then you start with a need. Always start small. I mean, there's a quote that I've used, and that Tracy Berry, I think I've just used before as well. It's not build it and they will come, but build it with them and they will already be there, right? So your community approach should also be bottom up. So involve members from the start as soon as possible if you are considering building an online community for your association. And then start with finding those needs from your members and start small with those needs and build community around that. And then, because otherwise it can be overwhelming, you can offer so many things to do, but then it's very concrete. I'm coming to the community to do this, and we're going to work on this together. And often this is around knowledge sharing and learning, or providing online education. And then growing from there, because then that small group will also set the tone about the culture, what type of behavior is expected here, right? And they can maybe take a proactive role in moderating or welcoming new members in that. So as soon as you can, make this a joint effort with your members, because it's for them. And this is very much also part of that approach. And it's, for some associations, it's quite scary actually, because the power of community is in scalability, right? Getting members to collaborate and actually letting go as an association or as a board, letting go some of that control that I think many associations have traditionally built up, right? They want to control every message that's going out and make sure it's on brand and it's right. But actually, community is, you want to get your members to engage with each other and work under your association's flag, and gives them some freedom and some sense of influence and ownership to collaborate on that. And you have to give them that room and listen to that and actually support that and build that further. So that's also a cultural change. I think you need to give let go of some control to give your members some sense of ownership, and actually a sense of that it matters what they do and what they contribute to your community, and that you want to support that and bring that forward.
I think that's an excellent point about letting go and kind of ownership. Are there any kind of tangible pieces of advice that you give to organizations that are challenged by that?
I think using your community platform to just send, right? Because that is then the risk. That is like sort of like a follow-up, a logical consequence of not letting go any control, right? Then your online community is doomed for failure. It's true. You need to be open and transparent and let go of some control and empower your members to be part of where your organization is going. And actually, that's a very good thing, right? Especially with these times of disruption. What should be the priority for my association? Should we just make this up in our board from an ivory tower and decide for my members? Or should we engage in a conversation with my members and jointly look for where we want to go and what they see is the most valuable direction to go or what we can do? So it is also in that sense the right approach to take. Like I said, I think the biggest value you can provide as an association is your ability to connect your members and to proactively challenge them year round to collaborate towards your mission. And this is, this means more bottom up and being open to that, because if they are criticizing your association, you need to listen to them anyway. Right? Because it will turn back to you. They will either walk away or they will talk about you elsewhere. So you better engage in that conversation with them and open up.
So let me throw you a bit of a trick question. Why is this not happening then? And I'm saying this from a social media perspective, because I see social media in a very similar way, right? If you interact with people, they interact back. But the vast majority of social media accounts, at least in the event industry, that's the ones that I tend to follow, are one directional. They promote what they're doing. They do things. There's very few that ask questions and authentically invite feedback. Right?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
And I agree on social media. That's not happening. Social media is good for building reach, right? But I think also both know, and this is a big difference between an owned platform. And when social media is not designed for effective community building or created a trusted environment to share. Social media is basically designed to harvest your data and sell you ads, right? So the engagement you build there is actually monetized or used by someone else. Okay. I love social media. Don't get me wrong, but it's a very different starting point. Whereas
the business model is definitely one of
the business model is definitely different. Yeah. So, whereas a member engagement platform or an online community platform like Open Social, but there are more, of course, that's designed for effective community building. So, and it's a very different starting point as well. If you as an association, and as we said, I think as an association, you're in the community building business. And this is a very effective way that a lot of corporates and other organizations are building communities, online communities with owned platforms. And that is because you create a safe and trusted environment for your members. And if you go there as a member, you know you're going to meet respected peers. You're going to meet other members. You know you're going to have quality content that's been checked, checked and filtered by the member organization or by the association. And you know you're going to have valuable encounters, right? And you know that you're being listened to there. And also, because you have the owned platform, you can actually give a much more relevant experience to your members because you own the data, right? As opposed to social media. So you know exactly what your members are interested in and what's relevant information for them. So you can use that data to actually provide them with a personalized experience and as partially automated experience for that part as well. And not only just from you as an association, but also from other members. Because if you've shown interest in a certain topic or a certain discussion, you can actually indicate as a member, I want to be notified about this or not, right? So you have control over your own experience, and you can actually then choose to engage or not, which is very different. It's very different from just sending an email throughout the year. It's a completely different starting point. Yeah.
I think you made a really interesting point earlier about, if you onboard a community platform and then you just use it to send stuff out, then it's a bit pointless, right? So I think that's a really, really interesting point. And I feel like a lot of organizations are just tuned to doing that. So it's quite hard to kind of break away from that in some sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there are many stories about, we've tried this, it didn't work. It didn't work, right? Okay. But why didn't it work? Because often then, indeed, it is build it and they will come instead of build it with them and they're already there, right? Very often then, it's the platform is launched and now our members will engage and they will communicate. No, you need to really start with member needs and member goals and identify those and start small and start with practical things you want them to do and steer towards that. And with an own platform, you can steer towards that valuable collaboration. But we see it is a big shift, and not just for your communication department. It's a big shift in culture, as we touched on before, right? It's a different way of doing it, and you need to embed this within your full organization. But we see some very good examples of this. Like I was talking this morning to the World Seed Federation, who have just launched their online community on Open Social, and they had some skepticism, like you had as well, right, about this. But all these members were very happy to be on board. And I had a member engagement manager on the call as well. She said, "Well, I'm actually contacted much less because my members can find other members they're looking for, or projects or topics, no groups that they want to collaborate on much quicker, and they don't need me anymore to make that connection, or they don't need me anymore to contact those other members directly." Right, and to collaborate together by doing like Dropbox documents or things like that. No, they can collaborate directly. So, it's happening, but it's also associations are often a bit slow moving, and I want to say it's difficult. It's a big decision, and in order to do it right, like I said, it does ask for everyone to be on board and a different approach, and not just from your marketing and communications department, but from your whole organization. Because otherwise, indeed, it won't work. So that's what's making it a difficult sell, but also a difficult decision to make. But a lot of associations we talk to do agree that in their long-term strategy, community plays a central, very important role. And the best way to build your online community is with an owned platform, because we identify that as the core business, the core value that you are offering as an association.
But so we've been talking about associations, and I know that's your background, so that totally makes sense. But is this limited to associations? And I think there are numerous examples of corporations and other types of organizations that are focused on building their community or trying to do that. It sounds to me like this could be an approach for any type of companies. What's your view on that?
There is, yeah. Then we need to then talk maybe a bit about the word community and what it entails and what it doesn't entail, because you see it's a buzzword, because there's a lot of commercial organizations very successfully building support communities, right? I mean, Salesforce is the big example. They have like 80% of their support questions answered by other community members, so by other clients of Salesforce. Yeah. I don't think that's a community at its core, right? Because a community typically has a joint purpose that they are collaborating to, and they have, and a support community, it's often not that. They come only to find an answer to a problem or a question they have. But there are many more. At Open Social, like I said, we work with United Nations, which is not an association, but they are, for instance, collaborating year-round on sustainable development goals. And that is also in between in-person events. So they're including internal and external stakeholders to actually and create communities of practice, which are different groups for the different sustainable development goals, to include as many stakeholders and persons as possible within this knowledge sharing and within this project and within finding solutions towards these sustainable development goals. So so for them, they are way more effective doing it this way. Another example that we have, and those are big as well, but is Greenpeace, which is a typical community of action. But they have mobilized a lot more volunteers towards their environmental goals by actually facilitating campaigning from grassroots, from bottom up. Right, so they have all these local groups on a community platform in different languages, in which they are connecting local volunteers to mobilize together and to organize campaigns and events and jointly contribute to Greenpeace's goal. But we also have smaller organizations, so there are many examples.
Yeah. Have you seen an increase in terms of people outside of associations kind of looking for this type of tool?
Yeah, definitely. And also from a lot of organizations that are not community-based or community-driven yet. And a smaller one I'm working with at Open Social is Stoma Connect, for example. So they These are producers of stoma material. As part of that industry, they have to produce it, and then before that they have to have testers, and before they are able to put it on the market and get feedback. So what they are doing, they're building a community for stoma users, and as with a joint purpose to increase the quality of life of people with a stoma. And they're doing that in a very practical way to give advice on using the products, but also connecting these stoma users with each other, right, for tips and advice on how to work and how to live a good life with the stoma. But for the commercial reason, for these producers of the stoma material, is to get testers on board and to get feedback on products, right, and to put their products on the market. And
it sounds like you need to have a bit of everything for the commercial side to work, right? If you just have the commercial side, then people probably aren't as interested.
No, definitely. That's why indeed it starts with a need for the members, right? If you miss that and you cannot fulfill those needs and don't have a very clear view of what those needs are, then you're missing the point. And you would be surprised to how many potential clients of Open Social I speak to that don't get this. Community. Oh, this is great. This is building retention and finding me new customers, right? But okay, what is the added value that you are going to give by connecting your customers or connecting your target group together, right? What are they going to do that adds value to them? Right. They only see it as a marketing or as a marketing platform, and then it's doomed for failure. And there are many of those examples, and that's actually one of my roles, to actually get that clear. What are those needs, and how are we creating added value by connecting your clients or your potential community members? And that's actually also why it's such a no-brainer for me for these associations, because they often have very active offline communities. Right, the community is already there, which is the biggest challenge for commercial community builders, to build that community. And that offline community, that member community of associations, is very special. It's often more special than those associations realize, because it's often been built for years and years and years. And their challenge is to simply cultivate that online. And that's not simply, but it's actually a lot easier than building a community from scratch, right? Like a lot of these commercial organizations are doing.
Absolutely. So it's a lot of the work is already done there, but it's just a question of then adapting it to the technology. Quick question. You mentioned kind of quite specific communities, and I've been reading a little bit about this online. How specific? I guess my question is, associations a lot of times want to have sort of one big discussion group, or kind of have all the members involved in kind of everything. But it does feel like sometimes when things are very specific, when it's like either regional or a specific topic or a specific kind of vertical within that sector or something like that, that becomes more interesting to people. Do you have any advice on, I guess, how granular to go? Or is this something that you should let the community kind of work out which ones they want to do?
Yeah, so I think this is typically some of those best practices from the community industry that we can use here, right? So at Open Social, we have introduced different types of communities that we identified, and they're identified by other community leaders and community professionals. I could quickly go through them just to give you an idea. So one is a community of action, which is all about mobilizing volunteers to jointly make a change in the world. So this is your Greenpeace typically, right? You want to mobilize them and you want them to collaborate.
Is there a sort of umbrella term or a generic term for what you consider this specific example and then the other ones?
So this is community of action. That is the type of community that we identify.
But in terms of, that is a type of organization that needs action, right? Are there things
not
that
an organization? Yeah, it's a purpose of the community, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to jointly do? Yeah.
Okay, I get that.
And
understood.
Right, because this is not just the organization. That's what I like about these types, right? Because you need to get into the members' shoes and you need to see what are we trying to achieve here together.
Yeah, that's really interesting from an association perspective as well, because you have members that are there for the status quo, you have members that are there to sell, and then you have members that are there to take action. And it's interesting. If you want to make a group just with members that want to take action about stuff, then you probably get a lot more excitement around that rather than including everybody.
No, indeed. So you could imagine, for instance, if an association is doing a campaigning or awareness day, Global Meetings Industry Day. It's not run by one association. I get it, but let's say that's a campaign you're running, and then you want to mobilize your members to create awareness and do advocacy for your industry and around that campaign. So that's a very clear purpose, and that's not your full community, but it could indeed be the goal of a group that you're creating within your community for your members to collaborate, to take action together, right? Second one is community of practice, which most associations are. So this is all about learning and sharing knowledge together, which is also a clear goal, right? Why are we collaborating? Why are we doing this? A third one we often work with is communities of circumstance. So this is people in the same in the same life stage or circumstance, sharing tips and support, emotional support. So this could be the Alzheimer's Association, for example, right? It's people in the same life situation, and that can actually get support and learn from each other and share practical tips. Community of place is people in the same location and being bonded by that and having a link to that place. Community of interest is your hobby community or the same interest or something that's next to it. And the support community, I mentioned those. So those are 6 types we see. And mind you, so these are theoretical handles, and you rightfully say, and I mentioned these types because you talk about, groups, what is linking these members together? And often it's a mix of those 6 types, right? And each group can function one of these goals and one of these purposes and one of the reasons why members are collaborating in that group. And that can be a community of place, could be a chapter of a certain association or of a certain collaborating locally, right? And connecting and making those connections based on their geographical area. So those are all like connectors or reasons for people to collaborate and connect with each other.
And I assume you would say that not every community needs to have all of these, right? It's just more of an understanding of what might connect people and how you might want to structure things.
Indeed, because thinking about that makes sense, because then you take the members' point of view, and that's where you see what are connectors and those are, of course, are the ones you should facilitate and amplify and make easy, right? So what is a reason for me to connect with another member or with content, and then identify those and make that as easy and simple as possible on the platform.
Great stuff. I think that's really valuable, and I'm looking forward to when I can share the link to this compendium, the community compendium. I think it'll be a good resource for anybody looking into that. So, let's say these tools become adopted by many communities or some good communities across the event industry. How would you see that sort of changing the event industry? And I guess this is more of a vision question, right? Like if this can impact the event industry in particular, how would you see that kind of impact changing the industry?
Now, I think, and I don't only want to talk about associations, but that for them the community aspect is so obvious that it's really a no-brainer. But okay, let's focus on that first, and let's do that further. The impact is, new members or new event attendants in general, right? They are used to engaging with online communities or with communities online, right? They are used to using their phone or touchscreens to engage with online communities. So, and it's not for every event for sure, but if your event has another purpose, so if your event has a higher purpose outside of the event itself, so you want to reach something at that event, right? Your goal is not just to sell events and make money from that. Then I think you should take a step back and maybe are there other ways instead of only events that I can do this, right? Because that is key here. You need to strategize on that level. And there are lots of reasons for thinking about it, because if you have a higher purpose of your event and you're actually in the community industry, or you can build a community around your event, then it makes a lot of sense to offer online community to your participants. And the reasons are plentiful. Because new generations are used to engaging with communities in that way, not just at in-person events or online events, but year-round. Environmental pressures, let's not... we cannot ignore that one. Having an alternative to having to visit an event, is very valid. We talk to a lot of organizations where where younger members are saying, if for me to join a community or to join an association, and the only way to engage with that association and with other members of the association in person, it's less relevant for me. They're very aware of their carbon offset footprint, and they want to engage with their members on their terms, and they're used to engaging in very different ways than just in person. But also, you're increasing your capacity as a community to collaborate, because you offer that year round, right? Not just at an in-person or virtual event, but year round. And you should not only control every experience or every event top down. By organizing community and having a clear view of the needs of your community, you just facilitate also them to create events from the bottom up, right? That's a lot of our successful communities are doing that. They organize their own events for their chapter group or for their regional group. And that's the scalability of it, right? The scalability and the power of your community. And by doing that, you're actually increasing the capacity of your organization and of your community to work together. So those are all, but it all starts with identifying the needs and the wants of the members and seeing if there's enough fertile ground to make it work, because it needs to be bottom up and not top down. And I think if there's anything, that is the main thing that you should take away from this, that will make it work, or that's make or break.
Fantastic. Great advice there, Thijs. That's kind of a masterclass, a short masterclass in community building, which I think is great, and online communities. Great. So before we wrap up, I wanted to get your recommendation for someone else that we should have on the podcast. This is a question that we ask everybody who's on the podcast. We've already started kind of interviewing people who were recommended before. So I'd love to also get a recommendation from you of someone who we should have as a guest.
You put me a bit on the spot here. I could have expected this question because I'm a regular listener, but I didn't think about it, to be honest. Have you interviewed or have you had Marjorie Anderson yet?
Nope, we have not.
You had not, because I think she would be really good. She's the community manager of PMI, Project Management Institute. She is actually one of the guru thought leaders on online community for associations and the place of events there. So that could be a good one. But I would also, if I would try and get some of these community leaders on your podcast, like Richard Millington or David Spinks and so on, because getting their view on it with a lot of experience under their belt would be quite relevant, I think. Because there is, I really see the events industry, which is my background, and the community industry, they're not collaborating. They're very separate, and they can learn a lot from each other. So I'm now sort of like in between those two, right? And I'm trying to find the best of both worlds and using that. So that could be a good advice, maybe, to get some community experts on your podcast.
Absolutely. I think more and more it is a relevant topic for anybody in the event industry, and it does sound like the crossover is obvious, but not always. Is there, but not always obvious to people, I think is probably the best way to put it. So it'd be good to explore that further. Thijs,
and I'd love to learn from each other, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, community bottom up, right? If we can learn from each other, then we can help each other improve. So I think that would be the best approach. Thank you so much for joining us today. Been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed being a guest. And of course, we'll link out to the compendium, the upcoming community compendium release. And I hope everybody enjoys reading that and connecting with you around this exciting topic.
Thank you so much, Miguel, for having me and talking to you again. And we'll talk some more.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Event Manager Podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest news and the best articles on technology and innovation in the event industry, head over to eventmb.com.